Well, hey guys, my name is Harvey. If this is the first video you're watching, welcome to MEN. As you saw on the website, this is just a men's group, support group that it's just a home for people to safely talk about issues and concerns, for men to do this and come up with solutions and answers. It's all described in the website. I'm not going to rehash that at all. If you've been on the website before, if you're already a subscribed member, you'll notice that today I deleted all my past blog posts. And the reason I did that is I didn't feel like I was being genuine in those posts. And what I want is I want a real conversation, a genuine connection, a brotherhood built up out of trust and understanding of each other. And it starts with me. It's my website. And I didn't feel like I was being authentic. I felt like I was lecturing. I thought I was trying to take the approach of take the approach that most coaches take, and going off of the way that they tell you to coach when you go through life coaching school or certifications. And I didn't want this to be like everything else, and I didn't want it to be a coaching session. I wanted it to be a discussion around real, relevant topics. And so I deleted them all, and I said, you know what, I'm going to start over. I don't know if it's going to hurt my business, grow my business. I don't know yet, but I do know that I will always be authentic and real and genuine, and that's what's going to take me to be successful. I know it, but it might take some steps back before I can go step forward. It is what it is. Anyway, so that's why I deleted these posts. Today, as you can see in the picture that I put in this blog post, it's a subject that's near to my heart. I'm going to try to get through this without breaking down. Feeling invisible, unnoticed, unappreciated, non-existent, very little, if any, value in anybody's life. I wouldn't recommend that, or not recommend. I wouldn't wish that on even my worst enemies, not that I really have enemies. It's just an awful feeling, because if you being in people's life holds no value, then you not being in their life holds no value, and you feel like it just doesn't matter. It feels hopeless. It's an awful, awful feeling. Now, in my part, the invisibility issue or ghost child issue came at an early age. There's a lot of dysfunction growing up in my family. I'm not going to hash into that too much. It's not really important because it's ran its course. I've forgave people that needed to be forgiven. I've forgiven myself, and I have found ways to move on and cope and get out of that cycle. And so I don't feel like rehashing it over and over again is going to help. But what I will do, and what I hope to do in this video, is rehash how I came to conclusions, how I adjusted patterns, and how I started my path down to healing. I'm still healing. I don't think that process is ever going to stop. There's going to be this constant process of healing. It's not something I do this, and this, and I no longer fall back into those old traits. There's going to be things that trigger you. That's a word that they use a lot today, but this is not a trigger just because something offends you. It's a trigger that is deeply rooted into your ego, and it scares you. And so when something happens, you take a step back and you wait a minute. I am not freaking being invisible again. I don't know what you're trying to do. And sometimes it's because they're acting similar to the people that made us feel invisible earlier, but they have no intent of making us feel invisible, but we get triggered back into it. So that's what I mean. We get triggered back. It's like a booby trap of some kind. People say just the smallest thing, and then boom, we're feeling invisible again. And it still happens today. Not very often, but it still does happen today. Okay, ghost child. So for me, like I said, I is a dysfunctional. So what is a ghost child? I came from a dysfunctional family. One, and that's one reason I was invisible. The other reason and I'll explain ghost child in a second, but the other reason I was invisible, and it wasn't until I was a sophomore in high school that I was over 100 pounds and I was over 5 foot. I was like 4'11", 87 pounds my freshman year in high school. Now I was a wrestler, so not to me people mess with me because I was the wrestler of the area. But yeah, so when you're that small and you're really quiet, I was kind of shy. I was almost need a psychiatrist level shy. There was a point in time where my parents thought that I needed to get tested because I might be partially mute. That's how shy I was. But it's also because I was tiny. So I blended in well because I was tiny, and I took on the coping mechanism of the ghost child. Now, what is the ghost child? A ghost child is a behavior pattern that one adopts to cope with a dysfunctional pattern, negative circumstances, just things aren't going well. And what a ghost child does is he takes on the persona that he needs to take on to fit in. Okay? Now, and that's going to be the persona with your one brother, it's this way. Another brother, it's this way. With your friends, it's this way. With the other group of friends, it's this way. You're never the same. You're always changing. You're what you need to be to not stand out, not to be different, not to risk causing waves. Now, in some people's circumstances, the reason they don't want to start waves is because those waves can lead to abuse, or they can lead to mistreatment, or it can lead to neglect, or it can lead to yelling and screaming or emotional abuse anyway. So if you blend in and everything stays calm, you're left alone. You know what I mean? You're safe. You feel safe anyway. The problem is those coping mechanisms stay strong the whole time. And so when you're out of the circumstances that you got or developed these patterns for, you keep them, and you don't longer, you're in a circumstance you don't need them anymore. So that's one problem with being a ghost child. The other thing with being a ghost child, that if you don't ever solve this issue, is you never become real. When I discovered this, I was like 36 years old. Now I'm 52. I didn't know what my favorite color was. I couldn't tell you what my favorite song was, my favorite band was, my favorite movie was, my favorite football team, nothing. I didn't have a favorite anything. That way, whatever I needed my favorite to be, it could be, and it would feel genuine. So you never get to develop a real, true, honest personality. And it, at 36, it ruined every single relationship I've ever had. And I understand now, because I wasn't authentic. I wasn't real. I was what I needed to be, and no one really wants that. You know what I mean? In a relationship partner. So I self-sabotaged. Okay, well, fast forward, I went through counseling, everything, and now I know I was a ghost child. What do I do about it? You see, most of my life, when I was feeling invisible, it was everybody else's fault. Why can't they see me? Why am I invisible to everybody? Why don't they remember I was in events? It was everybody else's fault. Now, granted, people know when they're treating you bad, but if you allow it, they continue to do it. Okay? So I allowed all that mistreatment just to remain calm area around me, because I didn't want screaming and yelling. I didn't like the loud noises. I didn't want the confrontation. I didn't want the anger and the fighting. So I did what I needed to try to keep the peace, and that's what I did. But it's not but I learned later it was not my responsibility to maintain the peace for everybody else. It's my responsibility for my own peace and my own peace only. So that was the one thing that I learned right away. But the other things that helped, I will go over a few of them, so maybe they will help you too. I'm sorry, this is going to be a longer video, but it is what it is. I realized a couple things. One thing is I'm no longer going to do unequal relationships. What does that mean? The amount of effort I put in a relationship, I better be getting back from the other person, or it's not equal. So if I'm the only one that ever reaches out, text, call, whatever, you never reach out to me. After a while, now that I'm healthy, it's like, okay, if I'm not worthy of your effort, then I'm no longer going to give you effort. I'm not saying that you need to be cold and standoffish. That's not what I'm saying. I'm extremely friendly. I'm extremely outgoing. It's just that if you don't want to respond to me, I'm not going to respond to you, because people always will make time for the things that and people that are important to them, period. And if they're not making time for you, they're showing you and telling you you're not important. Your time isn't valuable in my life. And so I move on. Whether it's my father, my mother, my brothers, my sisters, my cousins, my uncles, my best friends, it doesn't matter. Girlfriends. If you're not going to give me value the way that I give you value, then I move on. It doesn't mean that I hate you. It doesn't mean that I'm angry with you. It just means that I've moved on. So that was the one thing that I did that helped a lot. The other thing that I did is I worked on my self-worth. I worked on what I make lists all the time about the things that I'm good at and why I am valuable. And that helped me with my self-image a lot. I recommend that to everybody. But the other thing that I did was, I lost my train of thought here. Let me see. Boundaries. Boundaries. That's very, very key. I figured out what in my life is unacceptable. How I get treated, what is unacceptable, and I make it very clear and very well known to the people that are in my life and in relationship. I say, these are no go. These are no go. Period. No go. I'm not saying that you have to do exactly what I say, but I'm just saying if you want to be in my life, you adhere to these boundaries. And if you have boundaries, I'll adhere to them. If you don't want to adhere to those boundaries, you don't have to be in my life. I know that sounds harsh, it sounds cold, but it's just a fact. If people don't want to adhere to your boundaries, they're not really wanting to be in your life, period. Okay, so there was another thought I was just going to have, and I lost it. But boundaries is very important. It really is. What's the other thing? There's many, many things that go along with it, but I'm going to tell you right now, none of you, as I'm thinking, I'm going to just talk. None of you deserve to feel invisible. Nobody deserves to feel invisible. No one deserves to have people treat them like they're non-existent. They hold no value. If you are a human being who breathes air, you hold value one way or another. Period. It doesn't matter if you go on dating apps and they're like, hey, if you're under 6 foot, good luck. There's no value out there for you. Well, fuck off. My height has nothing to do with my value. Period. My job has nothing to do with my value. Period. Who I am, how I represent myself, how I hold myself and carry myself. Those represent my value. But most important, how I treat people who actually can do nothing for me is very important to how much value I have in this world. If I am helping people that really have no way of helping me, that's more valuable on every level than anybody that's over 6 foot. It just is. So we were talking about being invisible. Is a little bit longer of a video. It's a 15-minute video. Talk in the comments. Is there something any role that you took on as a childhood that you had to work on to escape? Did you learn to set boundaries? Do you currently set boundaries? Do you feel invisible now? Do you need help getting out of it? Were you at one time invisible and no longer feel that way? Explain to us how you got there. Let's open this conversation. Let's figure out what we can do to make other men feel less invisible and how they can develop their own value. We don't have to let society decide our value. We can decide it on our own. Women have been doing it for years, and it's time that we get to say, hey, no. You don't get to talk to us that way. You don't get to tell us what we are and who we are. You don't get to do that. We have boundaries. You can either choose to adhere to my boundaries, or you don't need to be in my life. Those are very important things that I had to learn for a long time. But I also learned that being disingenuous, unauthentic, will never build a real relationship. So if you're looking for real relationships, you have to find a way to be real with yourself and others. And I just now realized or remembered the one thing I wanted to say. And it just popped out of my laugh. Oh my God, it just popped out of my mind again. If you want to be true to yourself, people take your lead on how things work in your life. So what I mean by that, I learned this very hard way. If you're constantly joking about your weight, eventually the people around you will think it's okay to joke about your weight. If you constantly show yourself disrespect and you're not appreciative of your own actions and your own value, no one else will too. So how you treat yourself is the example to the world on how and what is acceptable to treat you. So you have to learn how to treat yourself better. It's got to start with you. It's always got to start with you. You got to learn how to treat yourself better. Anyway, let's talk about this in the comments. I'm sorry that this went a little bit long. I'm not sure if they're all going to go this long. I could have talked about this forever, but I want to keep it under 20 minutes. Let me know your thoughts. Let's get this discussion going, and I hope this new real, authentic videos is helpful. Have a great day. Have a great week. I will be posting another one in a few days. Thank you.